And it is, huh? What'd you say?
Oh, I started the recording.
Yeah, we are 1 minute away. My phone says it's 5 o'clock, so I'm going to start the meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for Georgetown on the 15th of June at 5 o'clock. We have public wishing to address the board. If you want to address this issue, be sure that we know about it. If you have a subject that you don't, that isn't on our agendas, but you want to have us discuss it, you can submit that through our liaison 1 week before the next board meeting. And at the time of this posting, no one has signed up to address this board. So item A is taken care of. We are now moving into our legislative regular agenda, and we have consideration and possible action to approve the minutes from April 20th. Shows you how much activity we have. So anyone have an objection to the minutes as they are written? I did not find any.
Mr. Marler, I do apologize. Would you allow Stephanie McNichol to call roll for the evening?
Okay, let me call roll. I've got, unmute yourself when you do this. Tim Haney. Tim Haney.
He's here.
Okay. Ed Whitmore. Ed Whitmore.
I'm here.
Okay. I'm here. Travis is here. I see him. Kayla.
I'm here.
Okay. Debbie Meyer is not here. And Stephanie Gibson is in her car and she's here. So we have our.
Here.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, we have a sightseer, Brian Ortego. Hi, Brian.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm glad to see you here. Okay, so we have item B, consideration possible action to approve the minutes of this board from April 20th, 2021. Does anybody have any discussion points about the minutes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move that we accept the minutes.
Ed Whitmore, and do we have a second?
Second it.
Who dat?
Tim Haney.
Okay, Tim seconded it. Okay, going down the roll, Tim, you approve?
Yes.
Ed Whitmore approve?
Approve.
Me approve? Travis?
Yes.
Kayla?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay, it's approved and moved on. We are going to item C, and we have our staff all ready to load us down with all the information we need on this public hearing and possible action. So we are now sharing the screen. Zoning Board of Adjustment. Go ahead.
Can y'all hear me?
Ryan, Ryan, introduce yourself.
Okay, y'all can hear me though? Zoom's being really weird. Hi, I'm Ryan Clark. I'm a planner here at the city of Georgetown. This is my first time appearing before the Zoning Board of Adjustments. So it's nice to meet you all. I've met some of y'all before as y'all serve on P&Z, but nice to meet those of you I haven't met yet. So can y'all see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
All right, let's get started then. This is a request for a fence that we're calling it a fence variance for 601 Shiner Lane, case number 2021-5 BAR. So this is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a zoning variance from UDC section 80704A for a 6-foot tall opaque fence to be set back 5.5 feet from the property line. A 63% decrease in the required 15-foot side street yard setback of ordinance 2016-24. That's a PUD ordinance for the neighborhood this is in. And this is for the property located at 601 Shiner Lane, bearing the legal description of Lot 4, Block F, Casper Subdivision, Section 9. So this is the location of the property. It's set in the middle of a residential neighborhood. This is the Fairhaven subdivision. As I've said, they have a planned unit development set over this neighborhood. This is just south of the incomplete extension of Southwestern Boulevard. You can see that it cuts off, and that leads across a field to the other stub of Southwestern Boulevard. So this is in the southeastern part of town where there's a lot of residential subdivisions being developed. This is an aerial of the property. You'll see later I took site pictures, but the residential structure on this property has actually already been constructed, and so is most of the neighborhood. But our GIS aerial map was a little out to date because these were very recently finished constructing. You'll notice that too when we talk about the noticing. But here is the exhibit that the applicant submitted for the request. So what you'll notice here is that there is an existing fence that runs along the side of the property that's currently set 15 feet back from the property line, required by the setback and required by the fencing requirements. What they're requesting is to bring the fence 9.5 feet out into the side yard, and then run it along the side of the house, as you can see by the red line, so that it covers a large portion of the side of the residential structure. So what that means is that it'll be 23.5 feet from the back of the curb, and it will be 5.5 feet from the property line, since it's 9.5 feet into the side yard setback. So this neighborhood is currently in a mixed density neighborhood. It's meant to be something with a variety of single family home types. It's meant to be a higher density than the typical more spread out nature of residential subdivision. I include an excerpt here of section E, lot design standards. This is from the PUD ordinance, and basically I just added that to note that for this specific property, it's actually wider than 50 feet. So because of that, the dimensional standards for the property are actually just the standard dimensional standards for the RS zoning district, which this property is zoned. So what that means is it has a minimum lot size of 5,500 square feet, has a minimum lot width of 45 feet, but of course this is larger than 50 feet in width. It's going to have a front setback of 20 feet, a side setback of 6 feet, and a rear setback of 10 feet. The important one here is that there is a side and rear street setback in the standard RS zoning district of 15 feet. So when discussing this variance, the Zoning Board of Adjustment may authorize a zoning variance from the requirements of the zoning provisions of the Unified Development Code if the variance from the terms of the zoning provision is not contrary to the public interest due to special conditions. A literal enforcement of the requirements would result in unnecessary hardship. The spirit of this code is preserved and substantial justice is done. So because of that, there are 7 approval criteria for a zoning variance. The first approval criteria is extraordinary conditions. And what that means is that there is something out of the ordinary and not typical on the property, such as topographical or other natural conditions, maybe such as a karst, that prevent the property from being able to have a reasonable use of their land, and would also put them at it. While also of note is not that while it would not be justified due to inconvenience or financial disadvantage, it's kind of a greater reasoning than that from the extraordinary conditions. The second approval criteria, no substantial detriment. Is that the granting of the zoning variance will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or injuries to other properties in the area of the city administering this code. The third approval criteria is in regards to other property, and that's that the conditions that create the need for the zoning variance do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. So it may sound like a double negative, but basically it's compliant with approval if it is unique and there aren't the conditions are unique and it doesn't apply. Those conditions don't apply to adjacent properties. The fourth approval criteria is in regard to the applicant's actions, and that's that the conditions that create the need for the zoning variance are not the result of the applicant's own action. So there needs to be a finding that the conditions were essentially out of their control. The fifth approval criteria is in regards to the comprehensive plan, and that's that the granting of the zoning variance would not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan and the purposes of this code. The sixth approval criteria is in regards to utilization, and that's that because of the conditions that create the need for the zoning variance, the application of this code to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of this property. And for the seventh approval criteria, it's in regards to insufficient findings. There are 4 types of findings that, even if present in this case, are not sufficient findings for granting approval of a zoning variance. The 4 types of insufficient findings are that the property cannot be used for its highest and best use, that there is a financial or economic hardship, and that there is a self-created hardship by the property owner or their agent, as well as that the development objectives of the property owner are or will be frustrated. So even if those findings are present, those do not constitute sufficient grounds for granting a zoning variance. When staff reviewed this request, we found that it complied with 1 of the 7 criteria for approval. It partially complied with 1 of the 7, and it did not comply with the other 5 of the 7. So as we go through these criteria real quick, I want to show you the existing conditions so we can get a good picture of it. So you'll notice the 2 stars I have, the blue star and the red star. Those are the 2 views I'm about to show on this next slide. So view 1, which was that first blue star, this is the subject property. This is currently what's built out there. You can see their existing fence line. And actually about where they have that yellow sign is about where they want to bring the fence out to. Just to kind of let you visualize it. They want to have it come out and cover the majority of those side windows. And the other thing I'd like to point out, because this will be a big part of the discussion, is another property just down the block within the same neighborhood with the same dimensional standards and code requirements that also has their fence within the meeting the 15-yard side setback and not covering the side of the house. So in regards to the first approval criteria, extraordinary conditions, staff found that it did not comply because, as I just showed on those views, this is not extraordinary in terms of their reasoning of not being able to put their fence further into the side setback and cover the side of the house. As I showed here, there are many other properties in the area that have the same kind of fence site layout, with it being 15 feet setback from the property line and not being able to cover the side of the house. So staff found that there were not extraordinary conditions present for this property and for this request. For the second approval criteria, we did find that the variance request complied with that approval criteria. As you can see in the updated aerial we have here, the 2 properties on the opposite side of Shiner Lane actually have residential boundary walls that are close to the road. So in terms of the aesthetic character, it would not be a substantial detriment having the fence be farther out. It would not be something that inhibits the safety of the neighborhood. They're not proposing to put the fence within the site triangle. It's typically required along corner lots. And what that is that if you start at the platted corner of the intersection and you go 25 feet in both directions and then connect them through an isosceles triangle that's 25 feet on both the right angle sides, there can't be anything built in that so that it doesn't inhibit the safety of cars traveling along it. So they're not proposing to get in that. So again, we found that there was no substantial detriment to the health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding neighborhood. So we found that complied with that. In regards to other property, again, kind of the same thing as I discussed with the first approval criteria. The other properties in the neighborhood, I also pulled out just another one that you see in the bottom right corner. It also has their fence not residing in the side yard setback. They had to stop. So pretty much all of the corner lots, when I went out there, all of them had their fence built to that 15-foot side yard setback and not within it. So it's very common for the development pattern of it. If you recall, we looked at the residential single family dimensional standards, and this lot meets the standard requirements for lot width and lot size. It has that standard 15-foot side yard setback. So this is just a very standard, property and alignment in terms of how the fence could be built in anything on the corner of an RS single family developed property. So again, that was not compliant. For the fourth criteria, in regards to the applicant's actions, we found that it did not comply because again, this property is part of a PUD, so it was pretty standard and set in stone that this would be the conditions, for the fence layout and for the housing layout on the lot. I believe they bought the property with those existing conditions, which is typically considered their own choice of action to have those standards and to reside on a property that is compliant with that 15-yard side setback. Additionally, that we didn't find any detrimental condition or extraordinary condition present that would prevent them from taking action to sell the property or get a larger lot that may fit the kind of fence construction backyard layout that they're looking for. For the fifth criteria for approving a variance, the comprehensive plan, looking at if the approval criteria, or looking at if the zoning variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, we found that it partially complied. As I discussed, while this would not necessarily be a hindrance to the character of the neighborhood, this mixed density housing neighborhood, you're seeing smaller lots in this area than just perhaps a larger lot, old school residential subdivision. We found that it couldn't be fully compliant because if they are to construct the fence into the side yard setback, that's going to kind of be an abnormality in the neighborhood. It's right along a sidewalk. So for passerbys going along the sidewalk, it's going to stick out that there's a house with the fence closer to them on the sidewalk than the rest of the neighborhood. And because of that, we found that this request didn't meet that full compliance with that criteria, because it might cause, while it isn't an abnormality and detriment to the character of the neighborhood called for in the comprehensive plan, it will be a step away from what the comprehensive plan is looking for. For the sixth criteria, utilization, again, we found that this request didn't comply. It's able to be fully occupied. The property is able to be fully occupied as a residential single family use, which is the best use in a residential single family zoning district. They are able to still have a backyard that's fully fenced in and gives them the privacy and buffering from the neighboring properties, as typical with other residential single family properties. Again, the rest of the neighbors in the area and the corner lots have the same conditions, and they're able to fully utilize their properties in terms of their backyard and how it's fenced. And for the seventh criteria, insufficient findings, we found that it didn't comply. So right now, I'm just going to go through each of those insufficient findings and what staff came to the conclusion of real quick. So that first insufficient finding, that the property cannot be used for its highest and best use, we found that finding didn't apply here. A single family home can still be constructed and maintained on this property. We found that there was no financial or economic hardship. It was mainly an aesthetic and privacy concern. They're just looking to have greater privacy for their house than what is standard for that neighborhood and have a different aesthetic pattern than what they currently have. That there's self-created hardship by the property owner or their agent. There is no external or self-created hardship. Again, they're allowed to have a standard residential single family use that other neighbors in the area and throughout the city also get to utilize, so it's not an abnormal hardship or even a hardship. But the development objectives of the property owner will be frustrated. The development objective of a single family home with a fully constructed and concealed backyard with a privacy fence can be accomplished within the current standards of the UDC. In regard to public notice, one property owner was within the 300-foot buffer, and that was actually the builder of the neighborhood, just based on the Williamson County data. Notice was placed in the Sun News on Sunday, May 30th, 2021. Signs were posted on the property, and to date, staff has received 0 comments in favor or in opposition. This is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a zoning variance from UDC section 807-04A for a 6-foot tall opaque fence to be set back 5.5 feet from the property line. A 63% decrease in the required 15-foot side street yard setback of ordinance 2016-24 for the property located at 601 Shiner Lane, bearing the legal description of Lot 4, Block F, Casper Subdivision, Section 9. And just to be clear, so the variance that would be granted would be a variance to the side yard setback of the PUD ordinance, which is actually just the side yard setback standard to the RS single family zoning district, 15 feet, decreasing it by 63% to 5.5 feet so that they can construct a fence. So if the zoning board of adjustments did seek to approve this, a condition that the board could place on it would be to only allow a fence within the side yard setback as opposed to perhaps any structure that could go there otherwise. So just keep that in mind. A supermajority 3/4 vote of the board is required to grant a variance. And when making a motion, the board must make a finding of the criteria. So the board, whoever's making the motion will need to go through each approval criteria and make a finding, like state their finding on that criteria for each of the 7 criteria that we have. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions or additional comments from staff?
Okay, anyone on the board, unmute yourself if you have a question for Ryan. Or Sophia's online. I guess she's ready to talk about it. Starting with Tim Haney, do you have a question?
Mr. Marlar, just to please forgive me for this interruption and Ryan for the small correction. This variance will require just a regular majority rather than a supermajority. And Mr. Marlar, if you please allow me to ask Stephanie McNichol, our recording secretary, to identify the voting and participating members of this group today. We forgot that step, and it's helpful because we actually have a quorum of regular members, and so an alternate members will not be required. And Stephanie, may I ask you to announce the voting and participating members for today's meeting?
Yes, ma'am. The voting members today are going to be John Marlar, Kayla McCord, Travis Perthius, and Ed Whitmore. Those are the voting members. Today, we appreciate the alternate members to join us because you do serve an important part, but those today, your vote is not needed. So what we need to do for the minutes, if we can make a motion again and have someone, a member to second it and then vote on that.
Yeah,
and we can get back to the minutes
Yes,
after this item.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
mentioned, was Travis listed in there as a voting member? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so right now we're just in the questioning period. I'd like to ask Tim Haney if he has a question of Ryan to please unmute and ask.
I'd also add real quick that the applicant is available for questions. They don't have a presentation, but they are here in the meeting. Just FYI. And that's Amy.
Okay. This is Tim Haney. Since I'm not a voting member, should I be asking questions?
No, sir.
Thank you.
I thought he was on his first term, Tim Haney.
As an alternate member.
As an alternate? Oh, it didn't show that. He's alternate, okay. All right, so let's go to Ed Whitmore.
I don't believe I got any questions.
Okay. I have no, I guess I don't have a question. I would like to know if the petitioner is going to provide us with a recital of his letter. Who is representing the petitioner?
That's the property owner, Amy Jacobson. She's
Oh,
in the meeting. It doesn't look like she's unmuted, but she is here.
Amy, would you like to, well, let's go through the questions for Ryan and then we'll come back to Amy. I have no questions of Ryan. Travis? None? Okay, Kayla?
Just one. Mr. Clark, there is nothing in the code that prevents plantings in that setback. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. They can have plantings within that side yard setback. They can also have a 4-foot tall, 50% transparent fence within the side yard setback. So there is ways that they could utilize plantings and that additional smaller, more transparent fence to accomplish the same purpose of privacy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, that's our voting members. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the petitioner if she'd like to make any comments, possibly review her 7 points or whatever, and then we'll entertain a motion. Ms. Jacobson, would you like to comment? First call. I guess she doesn't. Amy, I get we're not hearing you. Does it, Amy? This is your last opportunity. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and go to. I will entertain a motion on this petition. Please. Anybody that wants to, please unmute and start the motion, and let's see if we get a second.
This is Ed Whitmore. I would move that we deny the request based on the, I have to get my glasses out, but there's no, it doesn't comply with having extraordinary conditions. There's, it doesn't have any substantial detriment. It does not comply with other properties. The applicant's actions doesn't apply. Comprehensive plan, it partially complies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The utilization doesn't comply, and insufficient findings doesn't comply. And from what we've heard, there's other alternatives to doing this as well. Okay,
the motion has been made, but we found that Amy had a sound problem. I don't know. Let me ask the voting members.
Mr. Chairman, I'm working with Amy to resolve her audio issues. I'm trying to get her on the phone. So, Amy, will you just be sure you mute your microphone and then also mute your speakers?
Amy, you have to turn off your sound on your computer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now.
Great.
All right, let's suspend we have a motion, we haven't got a second, but I do want to give the opportunity to Amy to express what she'd like to express to this board. I have read her letter of intent, and I hope every one of you have, but Amy, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. So our primary concern is actually security. In Ryan's pictures of our side yard, our daughter's bedroom is on that side. it's not actually privacy. Because it's so close to the sidewalk, we're just concerned about security ultimately. And the reason why the alternate fencing we didn't feel was a great solution, because if you do drive through our neighborhood, it wouldn't match the rest to have the 50% fence at 4 feet. So our yard would actually look like the odd man out. And if you do drive in other parts of our neighborhood, we have seen fences that go up to the fence, which lead me to believe that people have bypassed the zoning variance. So I'm not sure why that 1 yard was the only example. So, but ultimately our major concern is just the children's bedrooms are on the side yard, and we just wanted the fence to cover that. We're not asking to go all the way out to the sidewalk. We know it's not a safety issue. So.
Okay, are there any other comments you'd like to make before we move?
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay,
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ed, you made a motion. Was anything said that would have changed your motion? Ed Whitmore.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
No, I don't think it would change anything.
Okay.
It still doesn't meet the requirements.
Okay, he has made a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Kayla McCord, I second.
Okay, we have a first and second. I will go through the roll call here. Ed Whitmore, are you voting for the motion?
Yes.
Okay, I am voting for the motion. Travis?
Yes.
Okay, and Kayla?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is carried to deny the petition. And that brings us to the end of this particular session. Let's take off the share, Ryan. Okay, so we have that accomplished. That's to me, that's the reason we can now ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Marlar,
Sophia?
please excuse me, but we need to revote on the minutes just because Mr. Haney actually voted on that one when he was not a voting member.
Okay, let's vote on the, we approved the minutes, the voting for. I was in favor. Ed Whitmore was in favor. Travis was in favor, and Kayla McCord was in favor.
Well, Mr. Marler, we do need for someone else to make a second because Mr. Haney made the second. So,
okay, I'll make the second.
Okay.
And we now have the 4 votes that are necessary. Okay, any other comments or questions from the board? Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate you being here. And Brian, I hope you can give us a passing grade on this in your next letter to the editor.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It was nice meeting all of you.
Yes. Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Ed Whitmore, I move we adjourn.
Okay, I second. All in favor, just disconnect.
Good deal.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.